Hello, and welcome back to Underworld Icons. Today, we're diving into the incredible story of Rayful Edmond III, one of the most notorious drug kingpins in Washington, D.C.'s history. His rise and fall in the 1980s is a story filled with crime, power, money, and a massive impact on the city. But who was Rayful Edmond III? How did he rise to power, and what led to his downfall? Stick around to find out. The early life of Rayful Edmond. Rayful Edmond III was born on November 26, 1964, in Washington, D.C. Growing up, he was part of a large, close-knit family. His mother worked as a school teacher, and his father held a government job. On the surface, Rayful's family seemed like any other middle-class family trying to make a living in the nation's capital. However, the environment in Washington, D.C. during the 1970s and 1980s was challenging. The city was struggling with poverty, violence, and a growing drug epidemic. Despite his family's best efforts, Rayful was drawn to the streets. As a teenager, he got involved in small-time drug dealing. But it wasn't long before he realized there was big money to be made in the drug trade, especially with the rise of crack cocaine. If you're enjoying this video, don't forget to hit the subscribe button. Introduction to the drug game. By his early 20s, Rayful had become a key figure in DC's drug scene, leveraging his business acumen to rapidly climb the ranks. Not just a street dealer, Rayful was a strategic thinker who built a vast drug empire, becoming the top distributor of crack cocaine in Washington, D.C. At the peak of his power, his operation moved hundreds of kilos of cocaine weekly, generating millions of dollars. Known for his ability to evade law enforcement, Rayful operated carefully and relied on trusted lieutenants to manage daily operations, allowing him to focus on expanding his empire while staying ahead of the police. The impact on Washington, D.C. Rayful's drug empire wreaked havoc on Washington, D.C., exacerbating the city's existing struggles with crime and poverty. The spread of crack cocaine devastated communities, tearing apart families and fueling a surge in violence. Addiction became rampant, driving many to commit crimes to sustain their habits. The scale of Rayful's operation left the police overwhelmed and the community in despair. Despite his millions, the human toll was immense, with neighborhoods shattered by the drug trade's violence and addiction. Rayful's power extended beyond drugs, earning him both fear and respect in D.C., while his wealth and influence made him a prime target for law enforcement. The law closes in. For years, Rayful evaded authorities through careful tactics, using burner phones, encrypted messages, and trusted associates. However, the DEA and FBI were determined to take him down, launching a massive investigation. Despite his vast, well-protected organization, the authorities slowly gathered enough evidence to act. They tapped phones, monitored his associates, and built a case against him. In 1989, after years of investigation, Rayful Edmond was arrested along with his top lieutenants, facing charges of drug trafficking, racketeering, and conspiracy. This marked the beginning of the end for his notorious drug empire. The trial and conviction. Rayful's trial was a media sensation. He was accused of running one of the largest and most dangerous drug operations in the United States. The prosecution laid out a detailed case, showing how Rayful had built his empire, the people he had killed, and the lives he had destroyed. One of the most shocking aspects of the trial was the sheer scale of Rayful's operation. The prosecution presented evidence that showed how Rayful had been importing massive amounts of cocaine from suppliers in Los Angeles and distributing it throughout the city. It was clear that his operation was one of the most significant contributors to the crack epidemic in Washington, D.C. Despite his lawyer's best efforts, Rayful was convicted on multiple charges, including drug trafficking, racketeering, and conspiracy. In 1990, he was sentenced to life in prison without the possibility of parole. It was a significant victory for law enforcement, but the damage caused by Rayful's operation would take years to repair. Life in prison and cooperation. After his conviction, Rayful was sent to a maximum security prison to serve his life sentence. However, his story didn't end there. While in prison, Rayful made a surprising decision. he agreed to cooperate with the authorities. Rayful's cooperation was a game changer. He provided information on other drug traffickers, helping the government dismantle several major drug operations. His decision to cooperate was controversial, both inside and outside the prison. Many people saw it as a betrayal, while others believed it was a sign that Rayful was trying to make amends for the harm he had caused. Rayful's cooperation led to a reduction in his sentence. In exchange for his testimony, he was moved to a less restrictive prison and given certain privileges. However, his decision to cooperate also made him a target. Other inmates saw him as a snitch, and his life in prison became much more dangerous. The legacy of Rayful Edmond. The story of Rayful Edmond III is a cautionary tale. His rise to power was fueled by ambition, intelligence, and a willingness to exploit the vulnerabilities of his community. But his downfall was inevitable. No matter how careful he was, the law eventually caught up with him. Rayful's legacy is a complex one. On one hand, he was responsible for spreading a drug that caused untold suffering in Washington, D.C. On the other hand, his decision to cooperate with the authorities helped bring down other dangerous criminals. Today, Washington, D.C. is a different city than it was in the 1980s. The crack epidemic has subsided, and the city has undergone significant changes. But the scars of that era remain, and the story of Rayful Edmond III is a reminder of the damage that can be done when greed and power go unchecked. The impact on popular culture. Rayful Edmond's story has also had a lasting impact on popular culture. His life as a drug kingpin has been the subject of books, documentaries, and even fictional portrayals in movies and TV shows. The story of a young man who rose to power in the drug trade, only to be brought down by the very system he tried to evade, resonates with many people. In some ways, Rayful has become a symbol of the crack epidemic that gripped the United States in the 1980s. His story is often used to illustrate the dangers of the drug trade and the impact it had on communities across the country. However, it's important to remember that while Rayful's story may be fascinating, it is also a story of tragedy and loss. Lessons from Rayful Edmond III's story. The devastating impact of drugs. Rayful's story underscores the destructive effects of drugs on a community. The crack epidemic in Washington, D.C. caused widespread devastation, affecting not only users but entire neighborhoods. The violence and addiction associated with the drug trade left a lasting scar that took years to heal. The allure of money and power. Rayful's rise to power illustrates how easily one can be seduced by money and power. Despite being a smart and ambitious young man, he chose to use his talents to build a drug empire rather than contribute positively to his community. His story serves as a cautionary tale about the dangers of greed and the consequences of making poor choices. The possibility of redemption. Rayful's eventual cooperation with authorities shows that even in the darkest situations, redemption is possible. While he can never undo the harm he caused, his decision to help dismantle other criminal networks was a step toward making amends. It's a reminder that it's never too late to make a positive change, even if it comes with significant risks. The story of Rayful Edmond III is one of the most incredible tales in the history of Washington, D.C. It's a story of power, crime, and consequences. While Rayful's rise to power was swift and impressive, his downfall was a reminder that crime doesn't pay in the end. If you found this story fascinating, please give this video a thumbs up. Don't forget to subscribe to our channel for more incredible stories like this one. And let us know your thoughts in the comments below. We'd love to hear from you. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you in the next video.